Every Sunday at 5 p.m. Studio B for Strange Universe. Every Sunday at 5 for Strange Universe.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Are you a fan of rock and roll? Does it get your feet tapping and your hands clapping? Then be sure to check out Crypt Rick's Rock and Roll Hour every Friday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern and Standard Time on Studio B right here at RevolutionRadio.com, where we get down and talk all things rock.
This is the People's War. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even constantly take part. You've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheel, on the lid, by all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to make it unless you're free. And it's working at all.
Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio!
Tune into Revolution Rango. Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio. Tune into Revolution Radio, Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio.
The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. Travel without moving.
And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. We're coming to you live from the Carriage House, somewhere east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future, and in here the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us as we endeavor to treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. This is the voice of the revolution. And we are streaming to you live with our good friends at Revolution Radio. We're also streaming to you live from, Rumble and YouTube and Twitch and X and DLive, Foxhole, and Truth Refugee. And we appreciate all the free listeners that are out there. This is where the free press begins. This is Wednesday night. Some people call it hump day, but I will tell you, when you're retired, every day is Saturday. So it's cool. It's very cool. The chat rooms are already filling. Let's see, who do we have first in tonight? Okay, O'Kelly was first in tonight. That's nice. East Coast 20, Stanley Mays. Oh, Jeff Engel is here. That's good. Deborah Pollard. Let's see, who else? Barton Roger. I know you radio listeners don't care, but I care about my chat room. And I want to recognize that they're here. Bayonet's here. Washakiwan's here. Truth Refugee. Cromwell. What is it? At Ox. I like that. That's new from YouTube. I appreciate that. I know we've been talking about going to the moon for a while. That's where we're going to start off with tonight. And Boy Dog Stew is here. And let's see. Tupac Sugar. Mark Hovsepian. Alm 3 Texas. What is it? Hot Tunes? I like that. That's pretty good. I know. Big D 1955 is here. You know, I asked Grok the other day, have humans been back to the moon since 1972? And it flat out said no. Humans have not been back to the moon. So I know, we all believe in a secret space program, and we have a moon base, and the Chinese have a moon base, and I know all that. But February 6th, the Artemis 2 mission is going to launch. I'm double fingers crossed on this one. 4 astronauts are going to be in this Orion capsule. Have you ever sat in an Orion capsule? I have. I have at the Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. First of all, I sat in the Apollo, and I said, "There ain't no way. There is no way I would sit in Apollo for 24 hours, let alone several days. No way." But Orion's a little bit bigger, but it's still too small. They're going to be in it for 10 days. 10 days in a space that's smaller than my bathroom. Of course, I have a good sized bathroom, but still, that's a lot of close quarters. 4 people are going to be in there. Let's see. We have the commander is Reid Williams from NASA, and Victor Glover, he's the pilot. Christina Koch, she is the mission specialist, and we have one Canadian. His name is Jeremy Hansen. So that's the 4 that are going to be aboard. Now, before any of this can happen, there's a lot that happens first. Now, they're already in quarantine. They're going to start doing some what are called wet drills, which is where they start filling up the tanks to make sure all the valves and all the sensors and everything are working. That's probably going to go smoothly because they've had lots of extra time to test all this stuff out. And remember, this is Artemis 2. Artemis 1, Orion launched, went around the moon and came back, except it had stuffed animals in it. Of course, what we were measuring then was how much of a problem are these Van Allen radiation belts going to be anyway? Well, they learned a lot on that mission, and that's why they're sending 4 live astronauts. The Orion is going to go 40,000 miles beyond the moon. This will be the furthest humans have ever been in space. The rocket's crew access arm, which allows the 4 astronauts and their support teams to reach the Orion spacecraft, is going to go through some test swings. The emergency egress system, this is how they get out. A basket system designed to bring the astronauts away from the launch, the whole system, in case of urgent issues before the launch. Checkouts for the pad, radio frequency communications, booster servicing, all that's going to be performed. The boosters are those side cylinders that you see on the side. Let's see if I can share a picture with you. I think I can do this. Let me swing this over here. Yeah. Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to do, I can do that, can't I? Presentation? Yeah, I can do that. Hang on a second. I'll drag this over here so you can see what I see. You can see the two boosters on the side of, these are what we're talking about. Once these are lit, there's no going back. No going back. And this, of course, is the liquid fuel. And then if you look, this whole thing here and that little cone right up there at the top, that's Orion. That's the actual payload. And then there's a set of rockets up here on the top that help steer it once it's free from all of this and out into space. So, kind of interesting stuff. I am fascinated by space, as you know. We talk about it all the time. And I'm happy that we're finally going to send humans back through the Van Allen radiation belts onto the moon and around the moon and back. It's a 10-day mission, as I mentioned before. Blackwell Thompson did not share specific timings of these events. The timeline needs to be flexible due to the developmental nature of the mission. It's not a regular thing that happens all the time, like with X. And I'll mention a little bit more in a little bit about that. But let's see. Space Launch System and the Orion capsule are that whole assembly that I showed you there. And what everyone is going to be watching for is what I call the wet dress rehearsal. This is where everything's loaded up. The tanks are checked for pressure, for leaks, all the valves and switching and everything, and sensors and backup systems are all checked. They demonstrate the ability to load, I believe it's about 700,000 gallons of cryogenic propellants into the rocket. That's a lot. And this is just to get it into orbit. That's not to get it any further, just to get it into orbit. So then they're going to conduct a launch countdown and practice safely removing the propellant from the rocket without the astronauts on site. That's 700,000 gallons. And that's the wet test. It's a consequential moment not only for NASA, but for the mission partners, but also the space community at large, which includes us, right? We're part of the space community. We own stock in several companies that are building stuff for the space mission. And so that makes us part of the community. I feel like I'm part of the community. It's a brand new vehicle. Part of the process was learning how to safely load liquid oxygen using the legacy hardware. That means old hardware that has fueled other missions at the Kennedy Space Center for decades. After the first 2 wet dress rehearsals, the team learned how to regulate the fueling temperatures. You have to understand that SpaceX has a completely different fueling system. They don't use hydrogen peroxide and liquid oxygen. They use methane. Yeah, the Raptor engines are methane rockets. I mean, super simple, super safe. Hydrogen leaks arose during the third rehearsal, led to NASA not only changing the way in which liquid hydrogen is loaded, but also modifying the ground umbilical plates that send the power, the coolant, the fuel, and the communications to the rocket. All that's to be redesigned. We don't want another Led Zeppelin to happen. You remember the Zeppelin? It was filled with hydrogen gas, one little spark, and all that hydrogen changed into water. When it did, of course, it's an exothermic reaction. All those flames you saw occurred. By the way, I don't think there were very many deaths in the Zeppelin because all the people were in the gondola on the bottom, which is where all the water was falling. So even though it was a great tragedy, it wasn't a complete death of everybody on board. Cow fart powered. Yes, that's right. That's right. The SpaceX is cow fart powered. Team made some changes to that interface between the flight plate and the ground plate to avoid the hydrogen leaks. That's where you have the flex hoses and all the connections on the back of the back plate. And when the leaks arose in a cavity where ground plates come together, this was addressed through modifying the flow rates, the temperatures, the pressures. A replenish valve in the ground equipment also proved tricky to manage. They haven't done this in a while. Sent humans. They sent all kinds of rockets, but not NASA rockets particularly. Anyway, once they get through the wet dress rehearsal, which is going to happen probably next week, we need to see what lessons we learn as a result of that, and that will ultimately lay out our path toward launch. The scheduled launch is for February 6th. Hopefully they make it, it's achievable, they get up and the mission goes as planned. Because February 12th, which is 6 days after this launch, before the mission is over, I will be on Coast to Coast AM with George Noory talking about this mission and talking about the future of energy in space, what we're going to do with the lunar base, and also what's happening in the UFO disclosure community. Should be an interesting program if you want to tune in. But Artemis 2 is NASA's first mission with a crew in a long time. The Orion spacecraft will confirm all the spacecraft system operate as designed with the crew aboard in the actual environment of deep space. We've done stuffed animals. Now it's time to do it with humans. The mission is going to pave the way for lunar surface missions, and we'll talk a little bit about that now. Artemis 2 is a big jump from Artemis 1, but it is part of what we call the Gateway Project. The Gateway Project is developing what we call cislunar space. Cislunar space is the space between the Earth and the Moon, and including the orbits around the Moon. There's a lot that goes into this, a lot. And it's supplied by all kinds of contractors. Just to give you an example, some of the systems that have to be in place before a lunar colony can be established. This is the goal, is to create a lunar colony. First of all, we have to get some GPS satellites in orbit around the moon. We don't have any. Well, I think we have two, but we need to link the GPS satellites to the surface, just like our GPS satellites are linked to receiving stations around the planet, especially in the heavily populated areas between the 60th parallels. Above the 60th parallels, not so much, but between the 60th parallels, it's pretty well done. We have enough satellites in our space right now that just about anywhere you want to be within that parameter of the 60th parallels on our planet, anywhere in there, you can access 12 satellites at the same time. And with those 12 satellites, we minimize what's called the Lorentzian error. Lorentzian error is where you're moving, the satellite's moving, and both are moving in curved spaces. And so there's a Lorentzian math error that makes it impossible to locate you in that moving space. It's just impossible to do. But if you can access 12 satellites, you can reduce the error down to a few meters. And that's how our GPS system works. You'll recall in the early days of the GPS, I don't know if you were back in the Garmin days. Remember back in the Garmin days before we had cell phone GPS? In fact, cell phones didn't do diddly shit. They couldn't take pictures or text or anything. It was just a BlackBerry. That was it. Back in those days, you were lucky to access 3 or 4 satellites. And I'm sure you experienced, if you had one of the old Garmin units, it saying, you have arrived at your destination. And you look around and it's a free vacant lot. You're not anywhere close to the destination. You can't even see it from where you are. Had that happen a lot of times. But now it's gotten better, of course. And I would say that as you get further and further north or further and further south to the 60th parallel, beyond the 60th parallel, no way GPS is going to work from the surface. You just can't get enough satellites. You can't get enough location. If you're up in the air, you can get some GPS because obviously you have over the horizon look a little bit better. But that's the way the GPS system works. So the moon, of course, is much smaller. Yes, Iridium rules, Markov Sapien. I have a friend that owns an old Iridium satellite, and he sells space on that satellite for, for private TV channels and for uh, logistics and sales and things like that. Private companies rent that space. It is his satellite that we were going to use when we do the North Pole Inner Earth expedition. We would actually upload our data to that satellite, and the satellite would redistribute it down to receiving stations on both continents. And that way we would have millions of people watching our expedition live on pay-per-view while we did the expedition. But we don't have such a thing on the moon. And so I don't know if you remember the old Themis program. The Themis program was 5 satellites that were put into orbit to measure the origin of the aurora borealis. They did one experiment because it was very difficult to get these satellites all lined up. But once they all got lined up, they turned the system on. They made one measurement, and they theorized, or at least gathered enough data to say that the aurora is caused by cosmic bullets in space, interdimensional bullets that explode energy into our dimension and cause the auroras to happen. I thought it was bullshit. I said one measurement just does not a theory dispel, but be that as it may, that was the end of the experiment. And so 2 of the satellites, the furthest 2 satellites out, were since been repositioned to orbit around the moon, and they actually work as GPS units. What we need to do, of course, is deploy a carrier, which SpaceX has. We need to deploy this space carrier to lunar orbit and then distribute GPS satellites around the moon. And then we need to land 1 or 2, hopefully 3 or 4 ground units that link to the orbiting units to create a grid around the moon. Because last time I checked, you can't fly roads on the moon because there aren't any, and there are no landmarks. It's like one crater looks like the next crater looks like the next crater. So in order to locate things for landing or for placement on the moon, we have to have this GPS system in place. Now, ordinarily what we would do if we wanted to build a forward location, pilots would fly the cargo freighters to that destination, and they would drop the supplies, generators, fuel, water purification systems, habitats, ammunition, all that stuff they would deploy onto the ground. They would drop it out of C-17s, or they would drop it out of Hercules C-130s, and they would put it on the ground. But pilots would have to fly to that location. and they would have to precision drop this stuff so that it wasn't damaged, and put it where it's supposed to go. We don't have pilots flying stuff to the moon. It's all done remotely. So the first movement, the first functions that need to happen on the moon need to happen remotely. And of course, they have to put kilowatt generators down. Kilowatt generator is a fission type generator that operates either off uranium 238 or plutonium, and will generate energy, electricity for 10 or 11 years pretty solid. But these are pretty sizable. They're about the size of a 36-inch refrigerator. It's a pretty good size unit. And it's going to take more than one. One of those refrigerators will generate enough energy to sustain one person. I know, you think, how could one person require a kilowatt? Well, or 10 kilowatts? Because that person not only needs to have heat, because you recall it's only about 35 degrees when the sun goes down on the moon. That's not Fahrenheit, that's Kelvin. That's minus 240 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty cold. And you have to stay warm while that's happening. So that can be done with electric heat infrared in an environment, but you also have to be able to create water and fuel, which can be created from the water that's in the soil of the moon. So something has to get the soil into the unit, and then the heat has to break that stuff out of there. In other words, boil the water out of it, collect the water, split the water into hydrogen and oxygen to create the oxygen for the human and the hydrogen for the fuel. Understand? All that requires energy. So it's going to take 1 kilowatt generator to sustain one human being. So probably what will happen is the kilowatt generators will be put up first, and then robots like walkie-talkie, jumping dog robots, and human robots, because a robot can pick up about 1,200 pounds. A human can pick up about 200 pounds if he's pretty strong. Of course, on the moon, that goes a long way because gravity is only 1/6 what it is here on Earth. So a man can pick up 1,200 pounds, which is a pretty good amount, but a robot can pick up a forklift, can pick up a big piece of equipment and walk it to where it needs to be, set it on the ground, connect it together, and build these complexes. And all that can be done remotely. But each one of these robots, of course, they can work without a suit. They don't need a suit around them like a human does. And they don't need water, but they do need electricity. And so 1 kilowatt generator will be required to handle about 4 robots, keeping them charged up all the time, because operating at 240 degrees negative, and by the way, when the sun is out on the moon, it's 240 degrees positive. So you can't survive as a human up there either way, super cold or super hot. Like water boils at 212. Humans can take about 250 degrees Fahrenheit for a limited amount of time. A limited amount of time. They could take 150, 180, 200 degrees pretty well. They don't have to have a tremendous amount of support for that, as long as they stay less than 15 minutes. Okay, humans can keep themselves cool in those kinds of environments. But of course, there's the issue of air. You got to have air to breathe, and you got to have some kind of way to capture the carbon dioxide from the human, keeping the oxygen levels in the suit at workable levels for 45 minutes to an hour, and then go back in and change out. Obviously, robots can operate for a longer time than humans can on the surface of the moon, but we don't want a completely robotic colony because that just won't work. It just won't work. We already know the problems we're going to have. You have a human presence for a lunar colony to work. But the first part of that whole mission has to be done with robots, and has to be done with support equipment being put on the moon. So when we go from Artemis 2, which is where we are now, we're going to go around the moon, 40,000 miles on the other side of the moon, and then back. It'll prove a lot. We'll learn a lot. You all might think it's a big waste of money, and maybe it is. But Um, once we start landing hardware on the moon, once we start putting hardware in orbit around the moon, we begin to develop cislunar space. And that's what the Gateway Project is all about. How fast is it going to happen? That's a really good question. I think if NASA is in charge of it, I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime. If private industry is behind it, which I think that's what really kickstarted this whole thing, not only SpaceX, but another company, you can't invest in SpaceX, it's privately held. But there's another company called Rocket Labs, RKLB, I believe is the symbol, RKLB. You can still invest in them. And I've done really well when buying into Rocket Labs when their fusion rocket first passed their thrust test at the Stennis Space Center. I invested in the company, and I've made, I don't know, 600% on my investment. It's good. I enjoy Rocket Labs. I enjoy what they're doing now. They recently had a structural failure in one of their rockets, but I don't think that's going to be a big delay for them. They learned a lot from it. But put it this way, it's less failures than SpaceX has had. And SpaceX failures have been quite spectacular. Now, so anyway, the next mission is supposed to take place in 2027. We are in 2026 right now, right? We just started 2026. I mean, that's super aggressive for NASA, super aggressive. But in 2027, the next mission is going to launch an Orion spacecraft, just like NASA's been doing. But we will also launch a Starship. And I believe the Starship is going to be launched well ahead of the Orion launch. And the Starship is going to be in orbit around the moon. Now, we haven't done that yet, have we? No, we've landed a Starship. We've dropped Starships in the Indian Ocean several times, right? And at least we can get them to launch into orbit without flying to pieces, right? But are we ready really to put humans on a Starship and launch it into space? No. So what the next mission is going to be is the Starship is going to go to the moon and orbit around the moon, and then the Orion capsule is going to launch and go to the moon, and then the astronauts that are going to go down to the surface are going to transfer from Orion to Starship. Yeah, they're going to transfer from one spacecraft to the other spacecraft. You know, this is pretty tricky to do, right? You think it is very tricky to do. The good news is that somebody's going to be flying that Orion spacecraft. And that's where it becomes much more possible. You try to do this remotely, you try to do it with the joysticks from the ground, it is doomed to fail. It will never happen. Just ask the Indians, ask the Germans, ask the Chinese, ask the Japanese, ask us. We've splatted all kinds of things on the moon lately. Really, seriously, the Indians have splatted 2 probes onto the moon. So once the astronauts are transferred to Starship, Starship is going to land on the moon. It could be done. It could be done. I mean, we've landed Starship on Earth, on the ground, with just computer programs. Having a pilot on board makes it a lot easier to do. And you also don't have to have all those heat tiles on that Starship because there ain't no atmosphere on the moon. This can just land on the moon, and it's a much more forgiving process than landing on the Earth. But once Starship is on the moon, the astronauts, it's a big space, so you have a lot of, it'll crew 100. It'll carry 100 people. It can carry lots of equipment. And all that equipment can be offloaded onto the moon, and the beginnings of a lunar colony will happen. Now, of course, it's going to matter where you land. If we land somewhere in the Sea of Tranquility, it's, I think, a big waste. But if we can get close to Schrodinger's Basin, which is basically a circle at the south pole of the moon, it's rather large. Inside of Schrodinger's basin is all kinds of interesting stuff. There's Shackelford Crater, which is full of hydrogen-3. There are lava vents that go deep into the moon, 15, 20 kilometers into the moon. We can release mapping robots. These robots aren't on tracks, they're on legs, and they hop around. So they're affectionately called space dogs, but they actually can hop around, and as they do, they can clear all kinds of obstacles. And once they get to the edge of these vents, they can map the inside of the vent. And if they can get down inside the vent and even follow the trail of the vent, way inside the moon, so they don't get too far and wear their batteries out, they can go in and come out and recharge. Then we learn a lot about building a habitat on the inside of the planet, inside of the moon, and that's the important thing. If we try to build on the surface, there are a lot of things we can do, um, but you can't, I don't believe, build habitats on the surface. If you build habitats on the surface, you run the risk of death because when the sun has a bad day, like a really bad solar flare, the surface of the moon can get bombarded with energetic protons for minutes to hours, and during that bombardment, everything organic is going to be destroyed. Maybe your equipment will survive, but I doubt it. You're going to have some regolith, that means dirt, lunar dirt, between you and what's happening on the sun. It will be a tremendous amount of energy, and it happens quite often enough that you don't want to build anything, least of all big fields of solar panels on the moon, because they'll be wiped out in 1 minute by the sun. You need to put these kilowatt generators, they'll last for a decade or more, put them on the inside of the moon. You're going to need one of these for every single human. So if you're going to have 100 people working on a colony up there, you need 100 10-kilowatt generators up there. It's a lot. It's a lot of energy. Can it be done? Hell yes, it can be done. But it needs to be done with vision. It needs to be done with consistency. And I don't believe that NASA has been very consistent in the last 50 years. Do you? I mean, we were going great guns up until 1972. We did things with a freaking slide rule that has scared the hell out of every country in the world. No one's ever tried it. We did it several times. We put 12 men on the moon and brought them back. But now, we're lucky to do that. But now, trying to build it with something more than a moon buggy and science experiments, it's going to take planning and coordination. And of course, the other issue is budget. A lot of people don't like the space program because it eats up a lot of money, and it certainly does. NASA eats up a lot of money. My buddies at JPL and Caltech, they eat up a lot of money, especially grant money. What do they have to show for it? I mean, a lot of high tech. A lot of the technology that we have are spin-offs from what we had to invent to make the space program possible. And you're exactly right, Flippy, too. I think NASA consistently lies to us. They discover things in space, then they airbrush them out and don't tell us about it. So we don't trust NASA. Plus, NASA is in administration. And what do? They launder billions of dollars of money. So, enter private industry. Why? Why is private industry interested in going to space? Because of the L-Cross mission. The L-Cross mission, I believe, was launched in 2006. And what the L-Cross mission was supposed to be was an orbiting spectrometer to sample the atmosphere of the moon. Yes, the moon has an atmosphere. Some of it actually comes from Earth. But we wanted to sample that atmosphere. And so the L-Cross mission was sent to orbit the moon and do that. It had a big spectrometer on it and it was fully capable of doing that. However, what happened was it ran out of fuel. It had a fuel leak and it ran out of fuel, and the L-Cross mission could have been scrapped that moment. The orbit was beginning to decay and needed to accelerate a little bit to pick up speed and stay in orbit and have any fuel to do that. So, what my buddies do at JPL, what we always did, is work the problem. And the problem was we didn't want to totally scrap the L-Cross mission. We wanted to punt. And so what happened is all of these big pieces of equipment that go into space have exploding bolts that keep the big chunks together. And we put that in there because in case of a mistake. So if we launch it into orbit and something goes wrong, like you remember Starlab. Remember Starlab? If something goes wrong and the big chunk begins to fall back to Earth, it's going to hit the atmosphere and a lot of it's going to burn up, but a lot of it's not. And the bigger it is, the more damage it can do, especially if it lands in a populated area. So we put exploding bolts on them so that we could blow the thing into smaller pieces so that when those smaller pieces hit the atmosphere, they burn up nice and clean. So L-Cross had these exploding bolts putting the and the rocket portion of it together. And so right, explode the bolts and drop the rocket body onto the moon. Just drop it on the moon. And separate the spectrometer from it far enough so that when the rocket body struck the moon and created this big plume of dirt from the impact, the spectrometer could fly through the particles, analyze it, send the data back to Earth, and then it would smash into the moon. And we had several minutes to get this done because they had separated by that far. And so that was the solution. Exploded the bolts, dropped the rocket body. The rocket body fell into a big crater on the south pole of the moon. We now call that Shackelford crater. And the plume happened. Now, we could see the plume from Earth with our telescopes, but it was too far away and not enough light coming through it. We could not do any spectrographic analysis in near IR or near infrared or far infrared. No analysis, just visible, which was useless. We couldn't tell what it was. But L-Cross, the spectrometer body, flew through those particles, analyzed it, and sent the data live to Earth while that was happening. Because it only takes a few seconds for some of the equipment on the L-Cross to make a measurement. They had a mass spectrometer on there. They had near IR on there, which uses diffraction grating to go through a whole bunch of frequencies in 20 seconds. But what we discovered was that crater contained a lot of frozen water and helium-3, frozen helium-3. And once that data got out, the race was on. What we realized at that point is measuring the depth of that crater and the size of the crater, the volume of the crater. It's bigger than Mount Everest upside down, flat on the top and kind of coned into the moon this way. Mount Everest upside down, frozen in the moon is 25 million years of helium-3 generated by the sun. Now we have helium-3 here on Earth, but it's rare. You have to go to like the edge of a smoldering volcano to get helium-3. And we use it for experimental purposes, but not enough volume to actually do anything on the Earth with. Most of the helium we have here on Earth is helium-4, which is very stable and what we, fuel our party balloons with and and lighter than aircraft. What we want is the more energetic and more reactive helium-3. Well, there it is. It's sitting right there in this big crater. So the plan is to either move the helium-3 from the moon to the Earth and power ITER, which is a big plasma reactor in France, or one of the other tokamak reactors around the planet. And there are some pretty good sized ones, but they don't operate for very long. They really have not been able to fuse helium-3 in any of these because of the challenges with gravity and atmosphere, and magnetically containing a plasma like that is very, very tricky. It just can't touch the sides, and it has to be compressed. But we know it can be done. We're fusing helium-3 with deuterium, which is a hydrogen atom with one neutron around it, or tritium, which is one hydrogen atom with two protons attached to it. So we've done that, but it's cold fusion. It builds weight, but we don't get any energy from it. It's not a 50 million degree reaction. What we need to learn how to do is to fuse helium-3 to helium-3 because of the products that we get. First of all, one of the products we get is helium-4, which is harmless and no pollution to it, that at all. But the other byproduct we get is two energetic protons. Well, protons are electricity. I mean, you can use the protons in a fuel cell and make electricity direct. And the other thing that you get is you get enough heat to keep the reaction going. So once you get it lit off, once that activation energy is reached, what happens is it will generate enough heat, if you contain it, to keep the reaction going as long as you feed it helium-3. And of course, that heat can be used to boil water, make steam, turn a turbine, do what we do with our nuclear power plants right now. Plus, you get all the protons, which is extra electricity. So, and no radiation. There are no neutrons in this, no energetic neutrons. You don't have to capture that stuff in lead rods. There's no nuclear waste. All good stuff and no waste. And the very good news is that in that crater is a 10,000 year fuel supply for planet Earth. And now you know why the gold rush is on. And it's not just governments that are interested. I mean, yes, governments are interested, but it's also private industry. It's SpaceX, it's Rocket Labs. There are a dozen other small companies. Unfortunately, and I will let you know as soon as it happens. Unfortunately, a very few of them are publicly traded. They're all privately held. And of course, you and I can't make money on that. We can make money when they become publicly traded. And I will keep you posted on that, like I did with Rocket Labs. So those of you out there that went out and bought, 1,000 shares of Rocket Labs are very happy with me. Of course, Europe is involved. Orion has European-built service models. It gives the spacecraft a big push needed to break free from Earth orbit and set course for the moon. And this translunar injection burn will send the astronauts on an outbound trip of about 4 days, taking them around the far side of the moon, where they will ultimately create a figure 8, extending more than 230,000 miles from Earth. At their max distance, the crew will fly 4,600 miles beyond the moon. During the approximate 4-day return trip, the astronauts will continue to evaluate the spacecraft's systems. I don't think there's going to be a whole much there. That's all advertising. It's just going to be in space. And instead of requiring propulsion on the return, this fuel-efficient trajectory harnesses the Earth-Moon gravity field, ensuring that after its trip around the far side of the moon, Orion will be pulled back naturally by Earth's gravity for the free return portion of the mission. The crew will endure the high speed, high temperature reentry through Earth's atmosphere. I'm sure that's going to be a rockin' ride and something that size. Artemis 2 mission hopefully will not land on the moon. It's not designed to. Orion's crew module, sometimes referred to as a capsule, capitalizes on more than 60 years of NASA space exploration experience. It's very thick. I'm trying to remember how thick that wall is, but it's about that thick all the way around. It's multi-layered with all kinds of stuff. And like I said, it's small inside. I think at the time that I sat in it, they said it would hold 7 people, not 7 of me. It wouldn't hold 7 people my size, maybe 7 5-footers, but I think they're going to be glad to get out of that capsule, those 4 people. I mean, a Falcon capsule or the Dragon capsule of SpaceX, it holds 4 people, but only for about 35 minutes. Now, once they leave the space station, they're in the Dragon capsule, they fall straight in and land in the water. They're in it for maybe 30 minutes. It's not a long flight. 10 days? I don't know. I'm a little buggy. I wouldn't be able to take the claustrophobia. The window's not big enough for me. Not big enough. Built by main contractor Lockheed Martin. Not terrifically pleased with Lockheed Martin. That's kind of a bottomless pit of money. You recall a man named James Comey. He used to get a lot of contracts for Lockheed Martin from, oh, yeah, that's right, the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, who's, by the way, about to go to jail for contempt of Congress. See, it's a big mess. But anyway, it can provide living space on missions for 4 astronauts for up to 21 days without docking to another spacecraft. Advances in technology for deep space travel, such as life support, avionics, power systems, and state of the art thermal protection, will support the crew during launch, landing, and recovery. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Covering the pressure vessel is the protective cover on the cone-shaped size of the crew module known as the back shell. Now, the back shell is made up of 1,300 thermal protection system tiles. The tiles are made of a silica fiber material similar to those used for more than 30 years on space shuttle missions. They can really, really, really take a lot of heat without transferring that heat through to the other side. The bottom of the capsule, which will experience the hottest temperatures as Orion returns to Earth, is covered by the world's largest ablative heat shield. That means it burns away as it comes in. 16.5 feet in diameter. I told you 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, and it's a small space. Small space. The heat shield will protect Orion as it enters Earth's atmosphere, initially traveling about 25,000 miles an hour and endure temperatures of nearly 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not really that high. The outer surface of the heat shield is made of blocks of a material called avcoat. It's a reformulated version of the material used on the Apollo capsules, and during descent, the avcoat ablates, or it burns off as it comes in. And of course, there's the forward bay cover. The forward bay cover at the top of the crew module protects the top portion of the capsule and Orion's parachutes during launch, orbit flight, re-entry, and then once it gets slow enough at about 23,000 feet, which is pretty close to the ground, then the chutes are deployed. Crew module has a propulsion system composed of 12 engines called reaction control system thrusters. When the crew module separates from the service module for re-entry, the 12 thrusters are used to guide the crew module, ensure that it's properly oriented with the heat shield facing downward, and keep the spacecraft stable during the descent. I'm going to watch the whole thing live. I don't know about you. It's one of my greatest hobbies is to watch these historic space flights. Of course, it has a lot of aluminum cross structuring. You're not really interested in that. but a number of accommodations help astronauts feel at home. Tanks and a dispenser provide drinking water, a simple way to rehydrate, warm food. Orion's hygiene bay will have a new compact toilet with a design that makes use in space easier for both men and women. Built-in exercise device provides both aerobic and strength training for astronauts. In case of irradiation events, such as a solar flare, the crew members will shelter themselves in large stowage lockers on the floor of the capsule using the dense materials on board as shielding, which are probably lead. Astronauts are going to operate Orion using a sophisticated display control system that uses advanced software to aid the crew. That's not going to be too difficult. Most of that's automated. 2 rotational hand controllers, 2 translational hand controllers, and 2 cursory control devices. Electronic procedures are also programmed in the system to aid the crew in daily and emergency processes. Environmental control life support systems will make the crew module a habitable place for the astronauts. The crew module houses Orion's parachute system. I already talked about that. Let's see here. Of course, the service module enables the Orion to go around the moon and back. The service module has 33 engines of various sizes. The main engine will provide major maneuvering capabilities while in space, including inserting Orion into a distant retrograde orbit and leave the orbit to return to Earth. You have to accelerate pretty fast to break the moon's gravity and hopefully don't go deep into space, but head toward Earth. The 24 reaction control thrusters are used to steer and control Orion while in orbit, so it's not spinning the whole way and making everybody nauseous and killing them. The propulsion system also has the ability to bring the crew home in a variety of emergency situations, including abort scenarios after the launch abort system has already been jettisoned. Let's see here. We don't care about the thermal controls. Yeah, okay, so that's about it. Let's see here. What is the chat room saying? Rock the Casbah. Yeah. The sea of tranquility is a state of mind. Ah, yeah. Let's see here. What is it? Markov Sepian says, burn up the moon and no more tides here in 10,000 years. Yeah. Yeah, the moon is responsible for our Gulf Stream pumping nutrients around the planet. I believe we have surmised that any successful planet with life on it is going to have a moon to that orbits the Earth, or at least the Earth rotates in front of the moon, so that the moon's gravity will create a tidal force which will pump the oceans and move the nutrients around the planet. Are you having trouble with the sound? Tupac Sugar says, what's wrong with the sound, man? I'm the sound man. I hope you can hear me fine. K.O. Kelly, the flux capacitor. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Let's see, distant sight. Do you think SpaceX and other Musk companies, boring tunnels, Starlink communications, Optimus robots eventually take over development of the moon resources? The answer is all that's going to apply, I think. If we can move through the moon, if we ever get sophisticated enough, we put a boring machine on the moon, and we can move through the moon instead of around the moon, it's going to be way better. Hey, let's take a quick break with our folks at Revolution Radio, and we'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away.
at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Tune in to the Family Industrial Complex podcast here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Get fit, empowered, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Rooster has crowed out the opening bars of a new day. You've dragged yourself out of bed. You turn on your device. You want to know what's going on in the world. But you're hungry for a topical show that serves up those breakfast headlines just that little bit differently. Do you like your early morning news the way you like your eggs over easy? Served with slathers of salsa-like sass? Do you like those first headlines of the day to deliver a punch as powerful as that first cup of joe? Join Mitchell Bupp at his breakfast table for Revolution in the Morning, where he will digest, dissect, and dismantle those new day's national and global news headlines with razor-sharp relish. Find Mitchell here at revolution.radio every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Studio B.
Through everything, we have to remember that we have more in common than not in common. And to find this common ground, tune in to Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio A. Because we come to this table of life to learn in the best possible way and experience this gift of life from our mutual creator. So let's learn together and build our best future with Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Studio A on Revolution Radio.
I will defend myself against their tyranny. Number 3 is my radio broadcast. I'm squarely in front of the public all the time, and they all know what's going on.
We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
Hello, my name is John Wayne, and I do a broadcast here at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, called The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
Freedom and fear are at war.
And folks, I assure you we are in Defense Condition 1, as we journey perilously through this paradigm that we currently reside in. And I ask that you join me every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
We shall never surrender.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for hanging in there while we took that short break. Now back to America Free Radio with host Brooks Agnew here at Revolution Radio.
All right. Thanks, Revolution Radio, for that station identification. We really, really appreciate our good friends at Revolution Radio. They have about 4 million listeners around the world. They listen by audio through TalkStream Live and Orange Radio and services like that. We would be nowhere without them. We really, really appreciate our audio-only listeners. The rest of you are listening by video. And that's cool because if you're watching my screen right now, you should be able to see my website, which is America Free Radio. And what we're going to do is click on my at Brooks Agnew homepage. And when we do, you're going to be taken to brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. You'll know you're at the right place because it says I'm Brooks Agnew. There's my picture. It's about as easy as it gets. 2 blue buttons, whether you're listening by phone, tablet, laptop, PC, doesn't matter. One says get my free newsletter. That's kind of self-explanatory, right? It's free because it don't cost nothing. And I send it out no more than 2 times a week. Sometimes I don't make it, but most of the time I do. In that newsletter will be a link to tonight's program so you can share it with your friends and links to other goodies which will help you with your health and aging, books, great inputs of all kinds. If you don't like it, just delete it. I'm fine with that, but I'd like to have you in my database anyway so I can send you important news items. The other is I'm in fenbendazole without a prescription. Now, you know what we call I will open this page for you so that you can see. One of the products that we are selling right now is called Ivermax. We're actually also providing the boxed version, which a lot of people like. It is full of 10 little foil strips like so. A lot of people like the foil strips because they're convenient, easy to slip in your purse or shirt pocket or share with friends. We will continue to provide those as well. And they're a little smaller tablets, but the same stuff. The other is fenbendazole. Fenbendazole has, as you know, properties as a dewormer, but it is also known as Panicure, and it has anti-cancer properties. And I have several thousand customers that get this every single month from me. We can sell it in the bottles, and we also have it available in the boxes. I'm not going to listen to preferences. We'll sell you what we have, and that's just the way it goes because this stuff is very, very hard. The other is True Niagen, which is a great product. I use it every single day. I take 600 milligrams, and this is what stops your aging process. All my friends do it. Many, many listeners on this program take True Niagen, and they all keep using it every single day. It makes wrinkles, keep your eyes sharp, your body feeling good. It pumps up your mitochondria and all your cells, which is the sort of the battery of your cells and keeps you from aging. Now, if you're rich, you can go get the intravenous NAD. Just get an intravenous fix. It's about $10,000 a shot if you want to try that. You can be just like the movie stars and just not age at all. But if you're like me, you can't afford that. You got to take it orally. The way to do it is to take True Niagen. It's made from milk, so it's totally natural. What it does, it tells your body, start making NAD again. So the nicotinamide riboside that is in the True Niagen makes your body make NAD, which is that component you stop making when you're about 45 years old, if you know what I mean. And I recommend taking zinc and magnesium and vitamin B6. We call it Zima. You can get it through my website. I don't make any money on it, but it helps you, and that's why I put it here. It preps your cell walls so that the ivermectin and fenbendazole can do their jobs. I will be carrying hydroxychloroquine again. Many of you have asked about that. It became impossible to get, but I found a source. I have some coming in. when I get enough stock, because what I have right now would sell out in 30 minutes, it would be gone. So trust me, I will get some stock back in, and when I do, I will put it back on the website, and you can restore your stock. And that's about it. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about, so let's get back to it. All right. Yeah, good. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Rocket Labs. If you didn't invest in Rocket Labs, don't worry about it. The reason I'm telling you about it is because I need you to know that SpaceX has a competitor. Oh, yeah, your kid's learning about Artemis? Yeah, good, good, good. He gave you a sweatshirt. That's very cool, at least. That's great. Your kid's on Team Artemis. I have an Artemis patch on my motorcycle jacket. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. What is that, JCW? Hello, everyone. I was driving. I was also the first one to post. Don't see it. Were you the first one in tonight? I thought it was K.O. Kelly that was the first one in tonight. I've scrolled back up here. There's a couple hundred posts here already, but yeah, oh, it was K.O. Kelly. I was right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you weren't the first in, but you can be the first in. You can be the first in Sunday night when we're on. So Rocket Labs is a very cool publicly traded company. RKLB is the stock code or the stock symbol. And they have been making good progress. Now, I remember when they were testing their first fusion rocket, and I was interested to know if fusion rocket would make thrust, not just the make thrust, but make their design thrust, and it did without blowing up. So I invested in the company, and it's done well ever since. I really appreciate the performance of Rocket Lab. So now they have a medium lift vehicle which is called the Neutron rocket. And I say medium lift, it's 141 feet tall. That's a pretty good size rocket. However, it was doing the hydrostatic tests this week and it buckled. So it's totaled. But the testing facility and all that survived. Normally, that doesn't survive if a hydrostatic failure, everything comes apart. But this one, it's back to the drawing board. But it is a setback for them, but they had originally planned to make this test in the latter part of 2025. They didn't make it. Now it's pushed. They want to launch. They wanted to launch in Q1 of 2026. I don't see that happening. But it doesn't mean that the design's not good. They'll analyze the test, and they will make their corrections. And the next tank will probably pass the hydrostatic test. Now, the Neutron is, and the reason this is significant because the Electron has been their workhorse. It's just been time after time after time dead on the money. But the Neutron is a class heavier than the Electron, which, it's seen a steady and consistent increase in small lift launches over the past few years, hypersonic missiles and low Earth orbit stuff. But the Neutron's, I said, 141 feet tall, and it is powered by Rocket Lab's Archimedes engines. The Neutron's first stage is designed to be reusable and able to land on an ocean barge after delivering up to 28,700 pounds of thrust. That's very similar to the Raptor engine. The Raptor engine, I believe, delivers 30,000 pounds of thrust. But as I said, you can't invest in SpaceX. SpaceX is all privately held. But for when Neutron gets closer to delivering that payload and closer to launch, I think it's probably going to be, my guess is going to be third quarter 26. Then the company is going to take another jump forward because now they can compete heads up against SpaceX for NASA launches. And SpaceX makes about $14 million profit off every single launch. And they're just launching like crazy. Some of those rockets have been reused 20 times. It's really quite incredible what SpaceX has accomplished. But Neutron is going to step into the Rocket Labs are going to step into the market with their Neutron rocket, and we'll see what that what it does. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Iran, because there's a lot of hardware in the neighborhood of Iran right now. Iran has, or at least the mullahs in Iran, have really screwed up. They've killed somewhere around 30,000 civilians. Now, we've had, what, 4 civilians die? All of them could have been avoided, and I would say all 4 of them put themselves in the situation where they lost their lives. Well, actually, 3 lost their lives and 1 was shot. He's in jail. This is machine gunning protesters down. This is throwing hand grenades into groups of protesters to try to disperse them. Not flashbangs, not tear gas, not pepper spray, not non-lethal methods, but lethal methods. And so Iran has stirred the ire of free nations all around the world, and the United States is really the only one that's stepping in to do something about it. Now, I don't mean that they're going to, but they're in position to. And of course, the phone has rung, and they have said, come to the table. Come to the table and negotiate. Of course, what Iran says, we didn't call for negotiations. But the United States said, yeah, we're calling for negotiations. You either come or else. So there's a 2-day crackdown that new reporting says has killed 36,500 Iranians. These are Persian women, most of them. And it's absolutely horrific. It's a death toll, placing it among the deadliest short-term mass killings documented in modern history, worse than Tiananmen Square. And there was so much blood that they had to hose it into the storm drains with fire trucks. Yeah. So the Ali Khamenei mercilessly crushed nationwide protests by any means necessary, like machine gunning and hand grenades. Even living victims were stuffed into body bags. And a surgeon who described the scenes as a nightmare unlike anything he had seen. And these are unarmed people, just mowing them down. Unarmed people. 36,500 is a small town, a good-sized town in this country. A wave of major investigations came out Sunday, provides the clearest account yet of how the Islamic Republic responded after protests that began on December 28th. Initially sparked by merchant strikes in Tehran before spreading nationwide amid economic collapse and political repression. The mullahs have been wiring their money out of the country as fast as they can get it. Oh, well, I don't mean to overlook anybody in the chat room. I just can't read everybody's chat while I'm doing what I do. I suppose I could do a program where we don't have any news and we just talk to the chat room, and that's cool too. So don't worry, JCW. I know you're out there. Keep putting your comments in, and I will get to them. But Human Rights Documentation Center, which documented the case of a young protester who survived by pretending to be dead inside a body bag, hearing gunshots as security forces executed wounded civilians who moved or moaned. So this went around shooting people in the head. The survivor remained motionless for 3 days, escaping only after families stormed the facility in search of loved ones. I mean, it's just like something of what the movies are made of. It's so horrific. What do you mean? It wasn't you? Okay. All right. Don't stroke his ego. Whatever. Come on. All you guys are welcome here. I love you all. The media line also obtained a message from a nurse who said patients were being systematically executed in the hospitals, including wounded individuals taken directly from operating rooms and then shot at close range. Yeah. Testimony the outlet reported was sent shortly before the nurse herself was killed. According to classified intelligence materials received by Iran International, the regime launched its decisive crackdown on the 8th of January and the 9th of January, deploying IRGC and Basij forces across more than 400 cities and towns, with over 4,000 confrontation sites reported nationwide as live ammunition replaced crowd control tactics. This, of course, the orders came straight from the mullahs. The outlet reported that the authorities imposed a near total communications blackout, cut the internet, mobile networks, external lines of contact, because they didn't want the world to see what they were about to do. So I'm telling you now on America Free Radio how horrific this was, and hopefully 4 million people now know what Iran has actually done and why President Trump has a formidable armada off the coast of Iran, and they're bringing Iran to the negotiating table. Now, those of you that are out there said, oh, Trump better not do anything. Trump better not attack Iran. Trump better not get rid of the mullahs. I feel differently than you. I think human life is precious, especially innocent human life, especially free and innocent human life. And in my mind, the mullahs have been there since 1979. They need to go. Senior commanders were briefed following a January 9th address by Khamenei, after which orders were issued instructing forces to violently suppress the protests. They killed them all until they just ran down the streets out of range. Initial internal tallies compiled in the days immediately after the crackdown only cited 12,000 deaths, only 12,000 deaths. Subsequent internal updates sharply escalated those figures: 27,500, 30,000, 33,000, and now 36,500. I think it's even more than that. Most alarming is Iran International reported evidence of systematic extrajudicial executions, including morgue images showing victims shot in the head while receiving medical treatment, some of them with breathing tubes, IV lines, cardiac monitors still attached. They just came to the hospital and shot them in the head. Doctors and nurses told the outlet that security forces entered the hospitals, removed the wounded protesters mid-treatment, and in some cases executed patients on site or inside ambulances. The Times reported that following Khamenei's directive crushed the uprising, security forces opened sustained fire from rooftops, police stations, deployed motorcycle units to pursue fleeing crowds. They chased them down and shot them in the streets, often in the back, as they were running away. The investigation described hospitals overwhelmed by gunshot victims, emergency rooms operating under battlefield conditions, and Tehran's Karizak Forensic Center overflowing with bodies as families were forced to identify loved ones from numbered photographs displayed on screens. Verified footage revealed by the Times showed body bags lining hospital entrances, wounded protesters bleeding in the streets, and rows of corpses laid out in morgue courtyards. Still some bearing signs of recent hospitalization, including eye injuries, chest wounds, and severe head trauma. This was not from falling down. This was conflicts with military forces under command of Ali Khamenei. The evidence of how widespread indiscriminate violence had become, the Times documented cases in which people were shot simply for being present in the streets, as well as accounts of protesters and bystanders killed while attempting to flee gunfire. That granular picture of how the killings were carried out was matched by new reporting on the scale of the bloodshed. This goes on and on. Experts consulting by the outlet struggled to find historical parallels, concluding that the only comparable event identified in mass killing records was the Babin Yar massacre, when Nazi forces executed 33,000 Jews by gunfire outside Kiev over 2 days in September of 1941. Additional testimony emerged from Israel Hayom, which reported that an Iranian citizen from the country's east managed to contact the outside world despite the blackout, and alleged that regime forces used mortar shells in the smaller cities. A claim that cannot be independently verified but aligns with accounts of rapidly escalating firepower. The human toll was further underscored by a first-person account published by The Guardian, in which an anonymous Iranian surgeon described hospitals turned into mass casualty zones as gunshot victims flooded operating rooms. "I've worked in disaster zones," the surgeon wrote. "Nothing compares to the nightmare I saw in Iran's hospitals when the state started shooting protesters. Pools of blood, hundreds of gunshots, no pause, and no limits." Iran International warned that the true death toll may still rise, citing deliberate body concealment, pressure on families, quiet burials, and disorder in the registration and transfer of corpses. Despite the scale of killings, Iran officials led by Khamenei have publicly acknowledged only 3,000 deaths, claiming foreign terrorist cells, and accused the United States and Israel of fomenting unrest. The revelations come as pressure on Tehran intensifies. Last week, President Trump called for the new leadership in Iran, while Iran officials warned that any move against the supreme leader would trigger an all-out war. Currently, an enormous armada of U.S. hardware is parked off the Iranian coast. Democrats want the terror to continue. Trump wants the mayhem and murder to stop. The hope is that removing the mullahs will set Persia free to have free and fair elections. It may be a hollow hope, for it appears we cannot even offer the same for our own country. And that brings us to Minnesota. All of this that you're witnessing in the news is by design by the Global Syndicate. The Global Syndicate, as I have described it in my books, Charm of Favor and Glance of Angels, is a very, very old organization. It's been around for thousands of years. They controlled the earth for over 5,000 years. History is full of their tactics. The Global Syndicate has killed billions, literally billions of people, by the sword, by the bullet, by the bomb, by the gas. Why? Because they want to rule the world. Now, I didn't say control the world. They don't care about controlling the world. They want to rule the world. They know there's always going to be chaos. There's always going to be mayhem. There are always going to be criminals and crime. They just don't want the crime to be committed against them. They don't want the crime committed against them. So what you see happening in St. Louis or Indianapolis or in New Orleans is law and order. What you see is the court system operating the way it's supposed to operate. Illegal aliens who commit crimes end up getting arrested. And when they get arrested, they go to court. When they go to court, they end up going to jail. They go to jail, they serve their time. 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. They are not in this country legally. They have committed a crime. They've served their time. And now it's time for them to leave the country. And so immigrations and custom enforcement comes to the jail to pick up the prisoner. Once they're released, they're handed over to ICE. ICE takes them to the border and takes them back to their own country. Get out and stay out. Because ICE, Border Patrol, law enforcement, and Congress should know this, that the people who commit crimes are the same. Over and over again, it's the same people. They don't commit one crime, they commit 50. and they get caught for 50, they did 100 or 150. The same people do the crime over and over and over again. Now, normally it's 2% of any society, but other societies have taken their 2% and exported them here to this country. So now it's not 2% of our society. It's more like 6 or 8% of our society. Think of it, 8% of our society. Murderers, rapists, child molesters, thieves, drunk drivers, people you do not want in your community. And so what we do as a civilized society is we have police forces. And we say to those police forces, we want you to capture these criminals and we want you to remove them from our society. So my kids can go down here and play soccer at the field without having to worry about being abducted. So my wife can go to the store and go shopping without having to worry about getting shot or raped or molested in some way. And I can drive home from work without having to worry about having an accident with a drunk driver that has no license and no insurance because he's from another country. I don't have to worry about getting robbed or stabbed or beaten up. I don't have to worry about being cheated or harmed in any way because the criminals are not in my society because I've hired the police to take care of that. But not in Minnesota. In Minnesota, that's not the way it works. In Minnesota, the criminals are protected. And the global syndicate has raised billions, not millions, billions of dollars to make sure that people are paid to go in the streets and attack law enforcement. And they also have shown that the prisons are not going to release these prisoners into ICE. The courts, they aren't going to do it. The people that are in jail, they're not going to do it. They're going to release these criminals back out on the streets to kill again, to strangle again, to rape again, to steal again, to deal drugs again, to fight, to drive drunk again, because they want them protected. And they've hired thousands upon thousands of unemployed leftists who are willing to go into the streets, even in the freezing cold, and fight the officers so that they won't make these arrests. Because, as I said, Minnesota doesn't turn over the criminals once they get done serving their time. They don't turn over the criminals that are in jail or have had their adjudication and a judge has said you have a removal order. Instead, they have to go out in the community and find them. They have to go to the apartments. They have to go to the construction sites. They have to go to the factories. They have to go to the stores and schools to find these people. They have warrants for them. They have pictures of them. They know where they are. They just have to go arrest them in the community. But these billionaires have paid professional protesters, I call them rioters, to go fight the police and protect that criminal. And recently we saw one of these. It wasn't his first time. He's been there a few times before. He had already fought with police and had one broken rib. He decided to go back for another dose, but I don't know if the first time he was armed or not, but the second time he was definitely armed with a 9mm Sig Sauer semi-automatic pistol with 2 extra magazines. Oh, he was ready for business. He was ready for business. Divorced, fired. This guy had nothing to live for. So he went to commit suicide by cop. And that's exactly what happened. His holster was picked by one of the Border Patrol agents. He didn't know that. He reached back for his gun anyway and pulled out a magazine instead. All this happens within about a 3-second period because the Border Patrol did the right thing. Anytime you scuffle with somebody, the first thing you do is you pull their shirt up. You pull their shirt up so you can see their waistband all the way around. Are they carrying a knife? Are they carrying a gun? It's their training. It's what they do. So they pulled his shirt up, revealing the gun. One of the Border Patrol agents picks the gun out of his holster. The instant that happens, he reaches back himself and pulls out a magazine. Somebody says gun, and that's when they shot him. All this happens in a 3-second period. Like 1, 2, 3, and he's dead. Every decision that man made that day led to his death. The fact that he packed his gun, the fact that he left his driver's license and his permit at home, the fact that he had extra magazines, the fact that he went in and fought physically with the Border Patrol agents, all those decisions he made got him killed. And what is the left doing? They're asking for the resignation of Christina. They forced Commander Bovino out of the arena. But guess what happened? They jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire. Because now you know who's on site? Tom Homan. And Tom Homan comes in. He has all the authority. All the authority. He has way more authority than Bovino did. Bovino was a nice guy. He was going after the arrests, and only the arrest was small targeted teams. His men paid the price. They were beaten, they were stabbed, they were run over by cars, all kinds of stuff. Tom Homan is not going to have those problems. And by the way, Tom Homan has one more authority that an assignment that a lot of people don't know about. Yes, he's going there to make sure that the criminal aliens are captured and deported out of the country. But he's also been given the authority to go after the fraud. And this is why I think most of the mayhem has been generated by the billionaires. Singham and others. By the way, I think Singham tomorrow is going to have his assets frozen by the U.S. Treasury. How would you like to be a multi-billionaire and have all your assets frozen that the U.S. can get a hold of? That's a big deal. You know what billionaires love? They love their money. Oh, they love their money. And I think they should go after George Soros too, and all of those societies, all of the NGOs they should go after. But be that as it may, now we're going to go after the corruption, and the corruption leads right to the governor's office. Because recently, a Signal chat was infiltrated by a very, very sharp reporter who managed to get in underground and listen and record the entire chat, Signal chat, which was a call, like a signal call. And guess who was leading it? The lieutenant governor of Minnesota. The lieutenant governor of Minnesota. Now, if you want to talk about somebody that should be impeached, somebody that should be brought up on charges of conspiracy to commit insurrection, she should be brought up. And I don't think Bovino would have done that. I don't think Bovino even had the authority to do it, but Tom Homan does. Tom Homan does. So what you're going to see tomorrow, there's going to be some open negotiation. Tom Homan's going to pull them together and say, look, boys, this stops, and it stops right now. State police are going to protect our guys as we go and arrest these people. And if anybody blows a whistle, gets in their way, blocks a car, blocks a doorway, blocks a roadway, they are to be arrested and tried and convicted. Now, a lot of people don't know what that entails. They just come out like, oh, we're just peaceful protesters. You stand in the road and block the way. That's obstruction of justice. That's a federal crime. You're arrested and you're found guilty. It's 5 years, 5 to 8 years, actually. If you physically touch a federal officer and try to stop him or pull on him or drag on him or choke him or any of that, it's 8 years. 8 years. Think about it. And if you only serve 2, you only serve 1, you only serve 90 days, guess what you are? You're a convicted felon. Now try to get a job. Now try to get a student loan. Now try to get a home loan to buy a house. You've fucked your whole life by taking that position. And that's what Tom Homan is going to lay out for them. Yeah, that's right. That's right, JCW. We're going to write a very stern letter to you, a very strongly worded letter. That's going to do the trick. Old Lay says, I'm a boomer, but I'm not one of the brainwashed boomers. Turned off my TV 30 years ago. made a big difference in my life. Yeah. I don't watch public TV either. I don't watch CNN, NBC, MSNBC, ABC. I don't watch any of that. I watch independent news, which is where I get a lot of my information. And of course, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading of posts, and I put two and two together and do my analysis, and that's why people listen to America Free Radio. But I'm also a boomer. I'm one of the later boomers, but I would almost consider myself Generation X, but not quite. Maybe in working life, Generation X, but I'm a boomer. And no, I'm not responsible for the Generation Z or millennials not being able to buy a house. Yeah, kill your TV before it kills you. Well, I have a 100-inch screen over here, but I don't watch TV. I watch movies. I love to watch well-made movies. You learn a lot. You learn a lot. Yeah, that's right, JCW. There's a reason they call it a program. That's right. And yes, we were talking about some of this last night on Toxically Masculine Tuesday. We do it a little more irreverently. It's led by Mike Barra, my good friend. Yeah, it was 28 degrees this morning in Florida, says JCW. I think it was about that here. And by Thursday or Friday, it's supposed to drop down again, and this time more snow. My whole driveway is still white, and the roof of the house over here, the north side of the roof is all white. So it hasn't melted off here yet. We're going to snow on top of snow. That's technically a glacier, I suppose. And by the way, I was right again, right again. I'm very rarely wrong, but this time I was right. This is the coldest winter since 1960. Yeah, that's right. Coldest winter since 1960. You might even call it global cooling, which is kind of what I've been talking about for a while on this program, haven't I? Well, you know what? We don't really feel sorry for you, JCW Boy Dog Stew down there in Florida. Yeah, this is Florida. It's bullshit. I know. That's why people move from Minnesota to Florida during the wintertime. They're called snowbirds. Yeah, we had a mild Christmas here too. We did. I think we were doing project in the garage and I was wearing a short sleeve shirt. But your Christmas down there in Florida was glorious, wasn't it? Oh, I get you. I get you. Yeah. Well, if you're not used to it, it can be rough. It can be rough. I went to the gym today and wind was blowing. It was 38, 39 degrees, but you kind of get acclimated to it after a while. I'm really not looking to this long winter, We're not even in through January yet, and it's cold, and it's going to stay cold up here till probably the first week of April, and then it'll start warming up. But yeah, 82 degrees on Christmas down in Florida. See, we hate you. We hate you for that. But the other thing is that, March and April are absolutely glorious in Florida. I mean, if you want to go to Disney World or Universal Studios or any of that down there, not necessarily the beach, but you want to go enjoy those things down in Florida, March and April is the best. Absolutely the best. It's cool. It's sunny. It's outstanding. It's just outstanding. Boy Dog Stew says it's going to be in the 20s over the weekend. That's right. It is. Wow. Yeah, it's global cooling for sure. For sure. I know. I tell you, here in North Carolina, it's probably going to be 9 or 11 or something like that. We live kind of in the foothills of the beginning of the mountains. So if you go north of here an hour, you're in Boone and you can ski at Banner Elk and all that stuff. I mean, it's snow country up there. So we're close to it. If you go a little bit further than that, you're into Virginia, and that's definitely West Virginia and Virginia. totally snow. Yes, boy dogs, dude, that's right. Florida is heaven. If you've come from places that have brutal winters, Wyoming or the eastern side of California up in the Sierras, maybe Denver or Boise, and had these winters where you just don't want to go outside. Or if you do go outside to check the mail, it's like you drive your car there. You don't walk down to cluster box. Florida's glorious because you don't see any of that. Now, 28 degrees is reminiscent of that kind of cold weather, but you can definitely wait long enough for the cold weather to go away in Florida because some warm weather's coming. You know it because they're so close to the equator. Boss Burning says, do you mind repeating when you're going to be on Coast to Coast? No, I don't mind at all. It's going to be the 12th. I'll be on from 10 until 1 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. So that's 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock here on the East Coast. 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning on the 13th. So normally what we do, the first hour, we talk about what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about the space program, secret space program, asteroid money, all kinds of interesting stuff. And then the second hour, we take phone calls. And I love the phone calls. Now, a lot of guests don't do a lot of phone calls. They'll do like the last 30 minutes. But I like the phone calls and I love questions and anything anybody wants to ask me, I'm game for. JCW, I can't wait for 98 degrees with 90% humidity. I'm more of an 88-degree guy. 82 to 92. I get out my Harley and I go ride. I enjoy it. I'll do it at maybe 75. I don't like riding when it's much cooler than that, very far anyway, because I have to wear too much. But that's when I break out the Harley and ride. And I don't really like the high humidity, but that's the function of the East Coast. It's that way from almost from Maine all the way to Florida. You just get humidity on the East Coast. We don't get that so much on the West Coast. You can pretty much go from Oregon all the way to Baja California any time of the year, except during the rainy season. And it's going to be more mild as far as humidity than you're going to see on the East Coast at all. That's why people like California. That's one of the reasons why everybody gravitated there because the weather was just, if it was hot, it was dry. If it was cold, it was dry pretty much. But that's why. Oh, am I hosting? No, I'm not hosting. Thank you for asking, Mark Hovsepian. Um, I've I've asked George. My first appearance on Coast to Coast was way back in 2005. I know it's a long time, right? You're talking 21 years I've been appearing on Coast to Coast. But he's never asked me to guest host. And I think the reason is because I'm over here on the East Coast, they're over there on the West Coast, and they sometimes operate out of Boulder, Colorado. I've been there several times. I've been to their studios. We've done Beyond Belief several times with George Noory, but they never asked me to guest host. And I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's because I'm too conservative for the group. But of course, I wouldn't be that way if I was on Coast to Coast. But I do enjoy being a guest on there from time to time. It helps me sell books and gets me a lot of visitors to my website. Oh, thank you very much, Independent Alberta. She said she just ordered Charm a Favor. Oh, you got to get the audiobook. Once you get the book, uh, don't find yourself the time to sit down and read the book and stay in it. You can listen to the audiobook. It's free. If once you get your book, just write me and I'll send you the link to the audiobook. And then you got to buy Glance of Angels because that's volume 2 of that Deep State series. And I think you'll really enjoy it. What is that, Olace? I had a vivid dream. I was told that I will not live much longer, and I'm okay with it. Well, I don't know what to tell you there. I mean, I had a vivid dream last night and I was flying. And I was flying and I was in the weirdest place. I was actually on the north side of Utah Lake. I haven't been there in 40 years. North side of Utah Lake, and I flew to BYU and ended up to going to some hotel that was close to there. And then I woke up. I don't know, but it was very vivid. I mean, I love the flying dreams. Don't people like flying? Let me see a show of hands of people out there who like to fly in their dreams. And then I'm going to ask you a question about that. Just put a hand in there, and I'll know some of you have dreamt about flying and that you like it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you're okay with it. After I built the carriage house, I live here by myself, and I have all the creature comforts that I ever wanted to have. It's a dream house for me. Um, sometimes I sit here and go, if I lay in this recliner over here and I die, I just die in my sleep and go away. What are my grandkids going to do? What are my kids going to do? How will they be able to pick up my pieces and keep going? And I have a lot of stuff. I got books, I got copyrights, I got patents, I got all the stuff out there. Nobody knows the secrets to all that. Just me. So you wonder, well, if I'm dead, you know, what the hell do I care? I'm ready for the next gig at that point. And I try to remember previous lifetimes, and I can't remember the most recent ones, but I remember distant ones. And I remember how I felt when I left those lives. And I mostly regretted not finishing, just not finishing everything. Everything wasn't tidied up. I died untimely. I was killed in war. I was killed in uh, a solar flare on one planet. I died suddenly, and I died in the peak of my life. When I was the most in love and I was the most fulfilled. I died, and then I came here to this planet, and it's much more of a challenge in some ways not. The other planets were harder to live, and some were more in warfare than this one. I mean, like warfare, interplanetary warfare, more than this one. This one you could pretty easily avoid warfare. It doesn't matter where you live, you could do it. You could live a pretty peaceful life, unless you live in South Africa and you happen to be white. But this planet has more potential than any other place that I've lived. It has more natural resources. It has more population. So it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to find people that you're going to fall in love with and work with and be friends with. And that's a great thing. And we have much more of a common language, much more of a common species. Oh, okay. So a lot of people like flying. All right. So let me ask the next question. I know. Try being on other worlds when there's more than one species. It's just, I mean, it can be fascinating. In one world, I remember one of the species was only 3 feet tall, but they were very industrious and they're very kind and loving, and they had a government but no laws. I know that seems so strange, doesn't it? They didn't have a criminal element in their society. Everybody did what they loved doing, and that was their reward. The baker loved to bake, the cobbler liked to make shoes, the seamstress liked to make clothes, the carpenters liked to make houses and furniture and all kinds of stuff, but they didn't get paid. Why? What did you need it for? If you got hungry, you just went down to the restaurant and ate. Why? Because the guy that runs the restaurant loves to cook food. And the people that do the farming love to have their food brought to the restaurants to be made into meals that they can eat, that the community can eat. And that's the way it worked. But there were no idle among them. Huh? There was no like ruling class. There was no like privileged class. Like even the WHO, had a privileged class. They didn't have that. They had a government, but no laws, and it worked very, very well. Now, me, I was a different species. I was 7 feet tall, and I did not interface with them except in a superior way, right? But we didn't use that superior superiority to dominate. We instead got along famously. We love to sing. We love to tell stories. We love to work together, hike together. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing, amazing planet. This planet, everybody here is one species, and that's a little bit different. All right, so let's talk a little bit about flying. Two kinds of flying, I think. One is where you just kind of float, like you lift up off the ground, and maybe you drift at about tree height, along. But sometimes I try to push that. I want to go higher than that. I want to go way up where I can see, and I want to go faster than that. And sometimes I try to push forward, and I feel like I'm being pulled back, right? So lately, and I say lately because I've been dreaming about flying for 100 years, uh, I've almost like teleported. So I don't fly from one side of the lake to the other side of the lake. I just visualize being on the other side of the lake, and all of a sudden I'm there. But I'm a little disappointed because part of the joy is the actual flying. Like I used to fly airplanes all the time. I can just about fly anything that's got a stick in it. But then I started, and it became boring to me. And then I started flying ultralights. And I flew at about 350, 400 feet, which was awesome. I loved it. It was like flying was supposed to be for me. And I did that for years. I flew ultralights and I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, that was real flying for me. So how many people fly slow? How many people fly fast? How many people feel like it's teleporting? So old age, you're 73. Wow, so you're a couple of years older than me, but yeah, you need to start doing the True Niagen. You'll carve off some of those years. You're going to be around for a while. I've been doing this for 21 years. I'm probably going to do it for another 20 years. If we have such a thing as the internet by then. I don't know if we will or not. Um, look, come on, the future's not anything like what I expected it was going to be. When I was 25 years old, imagining what today is like, I couldn't do it. Now, when I was 40, I could imagine this, and it's pretty much followed my imagination. But when we start becoming an interplanetary species, when we start getting energy from the moon, when we start thinking about traveling to Mars, that's going to be beyond my generation, I'm sure. But come on, asteroid mining, it totally changes the human race forever, forever, at least on this planet. And, we're not there yet. If you told somebody in the 60s, you know what, in the future, everybody walks around with their phones. They look at them all the time. They'd have thought you were nuts. What do you mean, look at their phones? What's on the phone? What's a phone? Why would you do that? See how dumb that is? Well, the future's more wild than you could imagine. This is America Free Radio. My name is Brooks Agnew. I've been your host for the last 2 hours. I know it goes pretty fast. But please visit my website, brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. Make sure that you check out the books, the audiobooks, and don't forget about the health and aging products. It'll help you have a long, healthy life, fight off the diseases that make it short, and keep going. And I also want you to concentrate this year about looking for the good in other people. I know it's hard to do. It's hard to do when you hear the news or watch the news, but you can do it locally. You can do it locally. I know you're going to have conflicts. I have conflicts with my mail carrier. I have to work on that myself. But I got to look for the good in other people and help it to grow a little bit every day. And if you do it, we'll save the planet. We'll save the planet. That's what it's all about. Earth Explorers, now go out and do great things. All right? And we'll see you on Sunday night right here on America Free Radio.
listening to Revolution